Hi, this is Mickey and I'm Dan. Welcome to another video. It's been a little while actually since I've done a video, but let's try and do this one. I'm going to try and do it in one take, less editing, straight to YouTube. This is about my new pattern generator website. I'm going to talk about what it is, where it is, how I'm using it, and maybe you'll be interested in using it too. So, some context. I recently made a diamond drag bit. If you follow me on other social media, you'll have seen that I made a little diamond drag spring loaded thing to put in my CNC machine, and that has got me into etching stuff like this. This is fancy pattern etched on steel. That was quite good fun. I also did like a little thing for my MX5. So it's a fun tool, and when you've got like hero patterns, that's kind of interesting. But I started thinking about the back of this card, and more specifically, I guess, about the various spaces in designs for things where I might want something engraved, a pattern, but what the workflow is for that pattern, where do you get the patterns. I started looking at websites, finding like downloadable patterns and free SVGs and all that kind of stuff, and there are lots of websites out there. The free stuff is relatively limited. It tends to be very wedded in with how you buy it. It's never quite what you want. And so I started thinking about how I can improve that situation with my own tool to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It is a pattern generator, but it's a pattern generator for CNC and laser and like people who do this kind of stuff. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that. In fact, let's start with an example that we'll kind of dig into. So a while ago I printed this. This is like a slim card carry case thing. It's pretty cool, and hopefully you can kind of see it has this like inset panel. It's inset panel design, and I think this is fairly common, I'm going to say, in designs that I make, designs that I see. There are various reasons that you kind of customize something. You end up with these kind of blank spaces that you might want to put a design in. So we're going to use this specific model as an example to show you what my pattern generator can do. And depending on how quickly my laser runs downstairs, we may have something to show for it. So let's take a look. Let me just switch you to my screen. Okay, so this is the website. In fact, let me start at the top URL. makergeek.co.uk is my blog, and other site, it's a WordPress site. But if you go to /pattern/, you come to what is initially a sign-in. It is behind a sign-in. You have to register for an account. It's an AWS thing. I'm not gathering any details. I just wanted this protected behind something so that, because of course compute costs money, and if it's going to be generating stuff, I want to know who it's generating it for, and we can talk a little bit more about the details of that later. But fundamentally, to use it, you sign up and then you sign in. And when you sign in, you get presented this. In fact, this is, in fact, let me create a new one, because you will get presented this. This is like the default pattern. And so this is the tool. It's very much a desktop tool. It's not a mobile tool. I mean, it would work on a mobile phone probably, but none of these controls are going to work very well. And this is really intended to be part of a workflow. So basically we have some controls for how large we want the kind of tiles that these things are. We can preview it as just a single tile if we want that clarity. We can set a certain number of tiles X and Y to preview, but the intention really is that this will tessellate into whatever pattern you have. And so when you first start, there is an example boundary pattern, and when you select it, it will generate this. So this is my boundary star, and it has been pre-filled with my pattern. And there is also an example cutout. So let's do that. And it doesn't always auto re-render. You hit the render button and it will regenerate. And what we should see is, in addition to creating, filling your boundary design with your pattern, you can then also specify some places not to put it, such as text, but it could be any shapes. These are just DXF files straight out of CAD. So you can play with this kind of stuff. We can make it, let's say, a little closer together, a little closer together. We can change kind of where the offset is. So this basic idea, there are various shapes you can pick. I say various: circles, polygons, squares, lines. Lines don't work very well at the moment. I will fix it at some point. But let's say like polygons. Obviously, you can decide how many sides you want them to have, and you can have more than one shape in one go if you want. So I can have circles and polygons, and then you can start offsetting them in different places. And this is various options for design. We'll come back to that in a bit more detail when I do more of a worked example. But this creates whatever pattern you want to create, and then you hit render, and it drops that pattern into your shape. Comme ça. This is actually a pretty big shape, so it takes a little while. I have a few others. In fact, let me pick. So I have a card shape. Let's render that preview. So what this is showing is that the text cutout that I still have selected is like does not fit within these bounds. It's not within the same alignment. But that's fine. In fact, I do have an example where I did that. He says, right, what I do need to do is hit the center button. There is a button for doing that. Cool. So we've jumped around a little bit, but what you can see is just a different cutout, different perimeter, different cutout, same pattern. And similarly, I have a bunch of patterns that I have pre-created. So you can also quickly go through your list of patterns and switch the patterns to things. So the idea is you can build up a library of patterns that you've designed and liked, that you keep as named things, and then you can create cutouts that you like and insets that you like, and you can combine them in whatever order you like, re-render them, and get your finished merged DXF. So what I want to do now is sort of do a bit of a worked example. So here we have Fusion 360, which is my CAD CAM tool of choice for the moment. And what I kind of just wanted to work through kind of hopefully quickly is how I think this workflow is probably going to go. So I'm going to import a mesh of that card wallet. So this is the thing that I 3D printed. I'm just going to turn it that way for the sake of viewing. So this is the mesh, and what I want is to fill this panel with a pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert our mesh into a body so that Fusion will let me work with it a bit better. We're going to split the body based on let me click that, based on one of those faces. Whoop. And so what that should have done is let me take away that boundary, right? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to create a sketch. I'm going to create it on the XY plane, and I want to project that boundary. So if I get rid of that, click that, boom. So get rid of that body. Right, so now I've got this outline, right? So I want to keep this outline. I don't care about the outer outline, so let's just delete that stuff so that it's not in our way. Did I not select that properly? There we are. Let's just clear all of that out of the way. Okay, so now we have the exact profile of the little panel on our object. And what I want to do is fill it with pattern, but I kind of want to put some text in it as well. So what I'm going to do for that, I think, is I'm going to just copy this line. Let me just zoom in on that. We'll copy this line. So we've got a profile line. bar that follows that curve. That's gone a bit wacky. We'll fix that in a second. Right, okay, so let's grab you, pop you back on there. Right, so we've got a copied line, and I'm just going to offset it in a little bit. And I'm going to use that so I can have some text on it. Right, so at that point, I'm going to treat that as basically done. We're going to create a new sketch on the same XY plane. For the new sketch, I just want this guy. Cool. And so if we create some text, we're going to put it on this plane, and I think we're going to call this text what? There we go. So that's a nice little bit of funky text in Impact. We can obviously change the dimensions, whatever, but that's fine. That looks good to me. So we'll do that. And then in order to use this as a DXF, we need to explode text, so we just get the lines. Sweet. So now we have sketch 1 and sketch 2. In sketch 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this line because I don't want it to confuse. Did that? Okay. Right, so we've got sketch 1, which is an outline, and we've got sketch 2, which is a cutout. So we're going to export those as their own separate things. Sometimes it doesn't let you select the menu the way you expect. Right, so we've got our outline, we've got our sketch, so we're just going to do outline, wallet, and we're going to export you as text wallet. So that's that, okay? So having generated our DXFs, we come to my website, wonderful, and we upload them using this, right? So we just select this, outline wallet, outline, let's give it a name, hit the upload button. When you first upload it, it does this. This doesn't stay around, and I need to fix why it doesn't stay around. But like, it gives you an indication of what your outline is. And then what we're going to do is going to go wallet text cutout. Choose that file. Boom. Outline wallet. Wallet text. Wallet side. Render preview, don't center. All right, so we've got our outline, we've done the thing. I don't really like this pattern. Let's do a slightly different pattern. So I actually created a pattern earlier which I quite like, and so let's just talk a little bit about this. Let me render the preview. So this is what it's going to look like. And I just want to talk about some of the features that come in this particular pattern. It has two elements, they're both polygons, and I used like the anchor offsets to sort of shuffle them around a bit into positions that I liked, and I'm using this mirroring thing. So there's a basic concept. If I go to single tile, you'll see what, like, so this is a single tile, and so there's this idea that you've created, you know, an XY grid of those tiles, but for each one you can say, actually I want the next one in this row to be mirrored X or Y or both, right? So the first one is not mirrored, and then you can say X, Y or both. In this case I've said the next one will be X and Y. So that goes along your row, and then along your columns even, get it right. And then as you go to the next row, you can define an offset, so you can say, for this mirroring pattern, I want you to shift it by one. So the one immediately beneath, like the core one, is mirrored, and so on. And you can kind of expand that to your heart's content. And so that is what is creating this effect when I show the tile of it being flipped and twisted and alternating to achieve what is, I think, a fairly attractive pattern. If I come back to the untitled pattern, again, like, you can do notionally as many elements as you like if you find they're useful. Whenever you create a new element, it just copies the one you have selected, so it kind of doesn't look like you've done anything. I probably need to fix that at some point. But like, say, squares, circles, random polygons. Obviously, you can take polygons down to 3, so you can have triangles, and you can drag them around the place. And by default, I tend to have this idea of copies of them scaling, because I think it looks pretty. You don't have to have any copies of them. You can just have a single triangle. You don't have to have them scaling. You could say that they don't scale, but they do offset. So that's only 2. So you can kind of create an array of them. And obviously, I also have the notion that they rotate. So you've got the rotation of the parent and then the rotation of the deltas. So you could just have them not rotate. Let me put this to 0. So 0 rotation, 0 scaling. I just want them to kind of radiate across with some offset. You can do that if you want. And hopefully, at least in theory, this combination, like, you can play with it live. Let's get rid of this guy, clean things up. Let's get rid of this guy. So you can kind of see how you might, using these constructs, create interesting new patterns. I don't know if there's much more to talk about in terms of its capability. You get to select all the ones you want. So I'm going to go back to my wallet pattern that I like. I will comment, like earlier, I used this checkbox to center the pattern. So because I created these at the same time in Fusion, the exported DXF is in the same coordinate space, but you might not maintain that. There's all sorts of reasons why you might end up with ones that don't overlap each other. And so that's what happens when one is off weirdly compared to the other, or maybe not even visible at all. So if you can't see it, hit center and it will bring it to the center. But if you want it to be a specific kind of location relative, then it's easier if you've created the outline and the text at the same time or in the same coordinate system. Hopefully that makes sense. So once we've done all that, we hit download and we get ourselves a DXF file. You will see I've done this test a number of times. I will also comment that at the moment I am limiting how many times you can download the DXF. New users get 5. Depending on how this goes, if there's interest, I will have to figure out what I'm doing. But at the moment, obviously, compute costs money, and it is running on on some compute that I pay for. So I didn't want to just leave it super wide open. But if you think this is good and you want to use it, let me know. And if you want more downloads, then we can talk about that. If it is very popular and people are very interested, I might have to come up with some way that people can kind of pay for it, such that I can justify the compute cost and maintaining it and such. But that's by the by. Let's continue with the demo. We have downloaded something. Let's go back to Fusion. And for the sake of simplicity, let's just start a fresh thing. So we're going to insert a DXF. We're going to go select our plane. Let's do top down, and we're going to go find our file. We're going to find pattern 15, and there we go. It looks exactly like it did on the website. That's a good sign. We're going to import it. Fusion can take a little while. I will say, if you go wild with patterns and size, you can very easily end up with tens of thousands of lines. Fusion does not like tens of thousands of lines. So on your head be it. Like if you go wild, then it will get real slow. Okay, we've got our pattern. So let's go manufacture. We'll go create a new setup. It will automatically select our pattern. I'm engraving, so I don't really need 1mm top offset. So I'm going to put that to 0.1, and then we're going to create a trace, which is the one that I think works the best. So in my case, I have a little setup for my diamond drag bit. Somewhere I have a laser definition, or don't I? Probably need to recreate it. But basically you just need a tool that it knows has ostensibly a 0 width tip, or a very thin width tip. So I'm going to select that. I'm not going to worry about any of these spindle speeds, because when I run the engraving bit, I just turn the spindle on, and when I run it on the laser, then the laser does it. Geometry, I like to select from here. It depends on if you've got more stuff, but since I want the whole pattern, I don't want to select all the lines individually. I want to do that. Hit go. Alrighty. So Fusion has sat and thought about it, and it has created a plan. And if I simulate that plan and hit go, you will see it doing its thing. And so that is what it will look like. And hopefully this workflow is useful. It's taken me a little bit longer since I have been talking about it, but it's pretty fast, right? As long as you have the outline or whatever that you want, actually generating the pattern and doing the thing you want to do with it is pretty quick. And I did run this earlier, true Blue Peter style, except it did not go entirely perfectly because of my choice of materials. So because I got my diamond drag engraver, I got a pack of these really thin aluminium stock things, and I'll show you the back of this. Basically, it's really thin, and you can see that this is all bent out of shape because driving the diamond drag bit around on it was unkind to the thinness. It caused it to crease up, and it was quite difficult to hold in place, and so it kind of ended up slipping out around. So this is not a great example, but this is what we end up with. And I've obviously cut it out to shape. Now, depending on how it's just gone, my laser has been running on another one of these, and so I'm going to go fetch that right now, and we'll see whether or not that has given me a perfect version of this, and then we'll wrap it up there. All right, so I have it straight off the laser. Let me just bring you in closer. So that is what it looked like off the laser. Let's see if it's focusing. Ta-da! Let me just remove this. I say straight off the laser. I needed to clean it up a little bit because of the vaporizing of whatever the paint or whatever is on these aluminium cardstocks, but that is, if I switch back to, you know, it kind of looks like the thing. Looks like the thing. So that's the workflow. That is it. Now, somewhere I have some scissors. I'm just going to cut this out and see if it fits on my little wallet. I'll speed that up in post, but that's what it looks like cut out. And here's our wallet. So let's. I'm going to put you back on the big screen. So there you go. I need to glue it in place, but it fits perfectly. It looks kind of cool. At least I think it looks kind of cool. Sorry, I'm looking at the feedback so I can see what you can see. But there you go. That is the whole deal. Hopefully that was interesting. This is the website. It is once again makeageek.co.uk/pattern/. You do have to sign up to log in and use it. But, you know, other than that, it is currently free. And I would love people to use it and give me feedback, see if it is something they would find useful. Cards on the table. If a lot of people find it useful, I will try and find a way to make it at least pay for its own hosting. We'll see how that goes. If you have any questions, hit me up. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, here. Email is not that hard to find. Yeah, I hope you had a good day. Thanks for watching. See you next time.